Recitation of the district mission and vision. Trustee Smith, would you please recite the district mission and vision, please?
Yes. Our inclusive learning community provides the best academic and social experiences by educating the whole child, one child at a time. Our vision, cultivating visionary leaders and compassionate citizens to be engaged in the global community.
Thank you. The agenda was shared with the board prior to today's meeting. Are there any additions to the agenda? If not, we will pass by unanimous consent unless there is an objection to doing so. Is there an objection to passing by unanimous consent? Hearing none, we will then pass that approval of the agenda by unanimous consent.
I'm sorry. Is this?
On to the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda approval.
Are you speaking of the agenda that's right now?
The agenda that's before us for this evening.
Because I just wanted to move the personnel action.
We didn't get to that part yet.
Oh, gotcha.
So, okay, so we will approve the agenda via unanimous consent. We're at consent agenda now. Is there anything to come off the consent agenda to move to action items? In this point, I think, Dawn, you want to move personnel?
Yes,
is that right?
President Alvin, I would like to move the personnel action over to action item.
All right, we'll move that to 6G. Anything else? Okay, is there nothing else? Okay, hearing nothing else, we have the minutes from the previous meeting then, still on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I approve the motion, make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the minutes. There's a second.
Support.
Okay, there's support. Is there any unreadiness on that motion? Trustee Hoyden.
Trustee Alvin, I'd like to edit our minutes in the motion that is cited on page 2, at the bottom of page 2, just to change one word. So it would say, Hoyda moved and Smith seconded to resolve that the Oak Park Board of Education approves the Michigan Leadership Institute Superintendent Search proposal to conduct the superintendent search. So change the word select to approve.
Okay. Change the word select to approve. So what we would need then is I would need someone to rescind the motion so we can pass a motion to accept the minutes, to approve the minutes as amended.
I'd like to make a motion to rescind the.
You don't have to make a motion, just rescind your motion.
Just rescind it.
Do we have discussion about?
Who had the motion?
Who had the motion?
Okay, Trustee Lunkins, would you care to rescind your motion?
Yes, I rescind the motion.
Okay, Chair, at this time, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
My apologies.
The minutes from the February, what date was that?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes of the February 9th special meeting as amended.
Thank you.
Support.
Motion been made, is there a second?
Support.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion?
I'm just curious why the amendment was necessary as a procedural matter,
I want to, well,
as a learning thing.
So,
I genuinely.
first of all, for accuracy, that was, the motion as I remember it was to approve rather than to select, but also to be clear that the action that we took was not only to make a selection between 2 competing organizations, but that we approved the contract with their full proposal at that meeting time.
That's fair.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor is to approve the minutes as amended. If we can handle by unanimous consent, that would be great. So is there any objection to handling by unanimous consent? Hearing none, the minutes are thereby approved. We will go to reports, and our first report this evening is from Dr. Jamie Hitchcock.
Good evening, Board President and Board Trustees. I have a short report tonight, and this information was noted in a previous board update on one of our Friday updates, but I want to spend some time to just review and repeat this information to the board and the community. We are pleased to recommend Sherry Buchzeiger as the new assistant principal at Oak Park High School. Ms. Buchzeiger will serve as the Oak Park High School assistant principal following the resignation of Anthony DeGrazia. Ms. Buchzeiger has 17 years in education in both the charter and public school sectors, serving as a high school social studies teacher, curriculum and assessment coordinator, assistant principal, assistant superintendent of curriculum, principal, academic engagement officer, and superintendent. Her colleagues have described her as a collaborative leader, a motivator, someone who is a great listener, and a master at generating growth and development in both staff and students. She is known for her community outreach and love for building positive relationships. She is eager to come back to her roots and lead in the district where her mom and other family members went to school. We are excited to welcome Ms. Buchzeiger to Oak Park Schools. Her resume was attached to our February 4th, 2022 Board of Education update. Many thanks to the interview panel for their professionalism during a very rigorous process. Final interviews were conducted on Thursday, January 27th, 2022, in person here at the high school. I want to thank Ms. Baptiste, Assistant Superintendent Ms. Baptiste, and Diglio, sorry. Ms. Vermiglio, Diglio and Vermiglio sometimes get me mixed up. Sorry about that. Ms. Vermiglio, principal, Mr. Conan, high school teacher, Ms. Guzman de Grimm, high school teacher, Ms. Cross, high school media center, Ms. Winston McCrary, high school counselor, and I want to thank Mr. Sanders, the other assistant principal, for assisting with the student interview panel. We had a number of students participate: Charles Gillespie, Unique Taylor, Javier Briggs, Veronica Compton Dupree, Robert Smith, and Gabrielle Lee. So they all did a wonderful job in the selection of our newly recommended assistant principal at Oak Park High School. This year, we also have the opportunity to recommend another Gerstecker Fellow. The Gerstecker Foundation of Midland and the Saginaw Valley State University College have announced the opening of the 22-23 Gerstecker Fellowship Program in Leadership. They're committed to developing outstanding school leaders, which we know is a very challenging feat at this time. The fellowship program annually selects up to 12 aspiring school leaders. The curriculum for this leadership development program spans 12 months with monthly meetings beginning September 22. The topics include planning to lead, communication, global education, political advocacy, developing leadership skills, diversity and inclusion, and building a culture of high achievement. Participants will have the opportunity to travel and visit K-12 schools, universities, and businesses as a capstone. And the destination for the travel will be contingent on, of course, COVID-19. And one of the best things about the program is that the Gerstecker Foundation covers any costs associated with this year-long study. So last year, we asked principals to recommend some teachers for this wonderful opportunity. Mr. Sean Kelly, who was a math teacher here at the high school, was a Gerstecker Fellow last year. And the runner-up, if he is still interested, will be selected for the position this year. So following that announcement, I'll share more information for the board. Also, I want to recognize Pepper for participating in If You Give a Child a Book. Pepper Elementary was selected to be the recipient of the If You Give a Child a Book school book fair that is being sponsored by Scripps Howard and WXYZ. It started last Thursday and will go through Tuesday, February 15th. The great thing about this program is it allows students to receive 5 free books, each child. So it's a wonderful program. We want to thank Scripps Howard, WXYZ, Channel 7 for your support, and recognize the Pepper Elementary staff for making this connection. Also, our Distinguished Night Speaker Series will be kicking off tomorrow. Just a reminder that instead of having the speaker in the Knights Lounge tomorrow morning, they will have the speaker here in the auditorium. And the first speaker in the speaker series is our guest, Dr. Stephen Sneed, former Oak Park High School teacher, supervisor of curriculum and instruction at Oakland Schools. So we look forward to seeing Mr. Sneed here tomorrow morning. And then finally, we reached a letter of agreement with the OPEA, also known as the Teachers Union. We have a letter of agreement to change the March 11 Professional Development Day to Good Friday, which is April 15th. This is to ensure we meet the hours and minutes as outlined in the State Aid Act. This came as a result of concerns about not meeting attendance for state aid on Good Friday, so we swapped those 2 days. Although it was previously negotiated, we understand that there are several staff members who are planning to observe that day, and we think that swapping it with a PD day to support our staff and families is a good fit at this point. So we appreciate the collaboration with the OPEA. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. We have another report from Daniel Phillips, Chief Financial and Operations Officer.
Thank you very much. I wanted to give a finance report, my first one here at the schools. And I just wanted to thank you for hearing me. For the
Can you
first
talk to
time-
the mic, please?
I'm sorry?
Talking to the mic.
microphone.
Okay. First, I wanted to acknowledge that we do have a full financial staff now for the first time since September of 2021. We have still 2.
I'm sorry.
Dan,
Ken,
you
I
can
missed
hear
your
him.
mask.
Why don't I
Take
do
your
that?
Yeah,
mask
it's
off.
just muffled.
Okay.
There you go.
That's better. Thank you.
You look good, Mr. Phillips. We like to see you.
All right. Well, I just wanted to, is that better? Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Is it fine?
Just to let you know that for the first time since September of last year, we have a full finance staff, myself being the CFO. We brought in Jody Malvin, who's jumped into her role as finance director. She's doing very well. We're doing a lot of catching up. I know that originally there was the financial statements were on the note for today's meeting. We have some catching up to do on those. They haven't been really updated since September, so we're playing catch up with Doreen's passing. There's a lot of information that we have to go through to make sure that those are accurate before we provide them. So I just wanted to give you that note. Last week we received a state aid update from the governor's office. It looks like that they're proposing $988 million to continue the weighted funding for Michigan schools. That would equate to pupil funding of about $9,135 per pupil. That's $435 more than what we have currently. Also, they're talking about, again, these are proposals. They have to be approved. Economically disadvantaged students, they're looking at $222 million, fully funds an additional 11.5% of the base per pupil amount per student, fully funding this categorical for all students in every district, increasing total to $746.5 million. This went out last week. I can provide you this report. There's also special education students. They're looking at another $150 million. Provides an additional 5% percentage point reimbursement of costs for special education students. This brings the state reimbursement of costs from 31% to 36%. Career and technical education, CTE, they're looking at another $30.8 million. This includes an increase in state reimbursed costs, additional funding for equipment purchases, and additional funding for millage equalization payments. There's also ELL, English Language Learners, 1.3 million, 5% increase to funding to support ELL students. There's other items also that really are not pertinent to public schools, but there's also a few other items. Early childhood interventions. They want to increase funding by 50% for early on program, which supports early identification and intervention services for younger children, 7.1 million for that. Expand home visitation and early childhood collaboratives effort is 9.5 million. GSRP, Great State Readiness Program, provides free preschools for income eligible 4-year-olds. They're looking at slot allocations of 21 million to increase the full day allocation from 8,700 to 9,135 to match the foundation allowance. That's per student. They're also looking at a home-based GSRP pilot. I'm not sure if that's something we would be looking at, but that is going to be a 2-year home-based GSRP model that's being created, operated by licensed family and group home child care providers. There's a GSRP startup grants of 30 million to provide startup grants to GSRP programs, 15 million, as well as funding to expand existing classrooms at 15 million. So there's a lot of funds coming. If they're approved. Also, they're looking at education retention, that they're trying to keep teachers on. As you know, with our district, we've been losing teachers, as all districts have. They've been really getting out of the profession. But they're doing retention bonuses, or proposing retention bonuses of $1.5 billion. And these retention bonuses will support all pre-K through 12 educators who stay in their school for 3 years. Years 1 and 2 equate to $2,000 bonus for every educator, administrator, paraprofessional, and non-instructional staff. Year 3 would be $3,000 for teachers and certified professionals. Year 4 would be $4,000 for teachers and certified professionals. They're also looking at teacher onboarding, induction, and mentoring of $50 million fiscal year 22 and $50 million fiscal year 23. Teachers will receive consistent high-quality mentoring and support with the support of universities. The experience would be free of charge to students and earns them graduate credits. It would also provide payments to districts to offset costs of allowing senior teachers fewer hours teaching and more hours mentoring. They also are talking about a regional innovation grant of $75 million. This provides grants to local and regional partnerships that identify a clear community need and offer ambitious plans with a focus on recruitment and retention efforts. So there's a lot, and also they kept going on. There was line after line. So this is the last page of these, but this is for education recruitment. They're looking at $600 million across the board for the state. Michigan Future Educator Fellowship of $250 million, which would be $150 million one time and $100 million ongoing. Creates a competitive scholarship available to eligible first-time degree seekers and career changers to lower the cost of becoming a K-12 teacher. Would also provide funding for potentially 12,500 new educators. They're looking at $50 million for school leaders, which would create a second track of the Michigan Future Educator Fellowship for aspiring school leaders and mental health professionals. There's stipends for student teachers of $150 million, provides a flat stipend for student teachers with funding prioritized towards Pell-eligible students that meet criteria to offset a portion of cost of paying tuition while student teaching. And then there's a Grow Your Own program of $150 million. This would provide grants to local districts and regional partnerships that offer plans to recruit, train, and retrain teachers from within their own communities. So again, there's a lot of opportunity for funding for the Oak Park schools. There's also a mental health piece of it as well, which would do a statewide expansion of the Transforming Research into Action to Improve the Lives of Students, which is the TRAILS program, which is $150 million. There's school-based mental health professionals support of $120 million. They would also strengthen school-based mental and physical health of $50 million, and that would be an ongoing grant. There's expanding school-based health clinics. There's $11 million going towards that. Again, these are all proposed. And then it expand specialized service for children with severe mental health needs. That would be a $5 million grant for that. And then there's also school safety. So they've hit every aspect of what our needs are in the school. And hopefully this will pass. But on the school safety end, they would strengthen school-based mental and physical health of $15 million. They'd also do school safety grants of $50 million. And that would expands allowable uses to include personnel, including trained school resource officers, which we are in need of, and training for new and existing staff. And then additional education investments, they would also have infrastructure monetization fund of $1 billion deposit and $170 million for grants in fiscal year 23. There's also Detroit literacy payments of $94.4 million. And before and after school programs, $50 million would be going to that. $25 million would be one time and $25 million ongoing. So again, there's a lot of programs that the state's offering. Hopefully that goes through. Originally, we heard a $4.5 billion surplus. That was in our financial strategies through the MSBO. I haven't heard, I know those numbers have been revised, but this was the latest proposal from the governor. So that's only part of my report. So another thing we wanted to address, I worked close with Steve Burnett, who does a great job for us, but on custodial support. Since I've been here, and I guess it's been going on for a while, the custodial staff through DM Burr has been not full. They've been short a number of staff, and in fact, after the holidays, we ended up having to close, and not close, but we had to have the high school go virtual because we did not have enough custodial staff. Now, effective next week on the 28th, not next week, but the end of the month, we are going to be short 3 key staff members as Farmington Hills hires their custodial staff in-house. They're pulling from districts around the area, and they're pulling all the best staff from these outsourced custodial companies. So we're losing 3 key employees at that time, not employees, but contracted staff. So I've been trying to get word from DM Burr that they're going to fill these staff, because there's been also other staff members that have, they've also interviewed with Farmington Hills, and we don't know, we could lose as many as 2 to 3 more on top of that. And that's on top of a depleted staff. So they are needing to do some recruitment. What I'm asking for today is for the board to just acknowledge that we can look out and see if we can get emergency group, another company that can come in and fill those voids if DM Burr cannot facilitate them. So that's what this report is, just making aware of this situation with the custodial staff. That also becomes a problem with the maintenance staff too. They're having a similar problem. We've had a vacancy in the HVAC role for months now. They've been trying to backfill it with another contracted company, but they are costing a lot of money. And now with all the new HVAC equipment coming in, we would like to see if we can perhaps bring this position, post a position, and have this HVAC person in-house. And what that would do is we could have a dedicated person that would take care and maintain these units throughout the district. Because again, when you have new equipment, you got to take care of that equipment. And right now, it is really difficult to have them serviced adequately. So anyway, that is the custodial support piece that I'm looking at. So that's my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Phillips? Trustee Hoyter.
Mr. Phillips, when you talked about the different items in the budget, was there anything in there to address capital costs? So the cost of infrastructure, buildings.
Yeah, they're talking about infrastructure modernization fund of $1 billion deposit and $170 million for grants in fiscal year '23. So
And how would that be distributed?
They haven't disclosed that. I'd like all of it, but
Anything else?
Yes, and how does that impact our budget outlook for Oak Park in general terms when we see these numbers and we look out at projections towards next year's budget, the year after that, et cetera?
the solid numbers are for '22 and '23. Beyond that, there are some of these that do carry over that will progress. They note those, but again, these are proposals, but they're pretty strong. For them to get as far as they did with this budget forecast and it being actually sent out to all the school districts, we're hoping that it does come to fruition. But yeah, I would say 22, 23 would be that's how far out I would project most of them. But I haven't dug into the numbers yet.
Anything else? Okay.
sorry.
Trustee Corcoran.
Good evening. The question that I had was when you were stating about a proposal, perhaps having an emergency custodial service come in. My question is, what is DM Burr offering to keep or maintain the staff that they have? Because if we outsource, then we're speaking of raising income, I'm sure. So with that being so, how are we going to counter what we already have?
Well, the thing with DM Burr is we're not paying for those employees that are not filling those roles. So there's an actual decrease in the funding for that. I mean, so we actually have, a surplus on that end, but again, the service, the quality of service is down considerably because we don't have that staffing. As far as bringing in another company, we would have to solicit quotes for those services, and we would try to still remain within the budget of what we have, or what has been budgeted for custodial services.
So are you saying that the ones that have left, it's not based on the rate they're paying, it's just based on?
Well, the rate they're paying is comparable. Actually, it was lower than other districts surrounding our area, but we provide them $1.50 per hour for an incentive for attendance. And so that, when they factor that in, it brings their rate comparable to everybody else in the area. So I won't get into the dollar amounts right now, but it is comparable to the other districts surrounding us.
Dr. Hitchcock.
I can just share, just to piggyback on that. So I will share the dollar amounts. We increased their wages when we realized that there was a staffing shortage. And so now they're being paid $14 an hour with an extra $1.50 per hour for attendance and as an attendance incentive. In addition to that, they have benefits, medical, dental, and vision insurance, short and long-term disability, life insurance, a 401k, paid vacation, paid holiday, consistent work schedules, and training, as well as they often get a bonus if they receive positive feedback from a staff member in the district. They also get a salary bonus incentive. One of the things that's important to note is that I've had a conversation with the some of our best custodians, and one in particular who is going to Farmington, and she indicated that the reason that she's making the decision to go to Farmington is because she would be a public school employee again, which would make her eligible for a pension. So prior to not all, but many school districts choosing to go the third-party contractor route, custodians were employees of districts, which meant they were eligible for pensions. But being in DM Burr, contracted through DM Burr, they're not eligible for a pension. So this opportunity allows her to go back and feed into the retirement system to eventually retire at the end of her career.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. Anything else, Trustee Corcoran?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear in regard to Farmington. So you're stating that they're basically being hired through the district, not through third party?
Yes,
That's
yes.
correct.
They've decided to bring the custodians back in-house, to hire them direct as employees of the district.
Would that be an option for us, seeing that we are losing our custodials to other districts based on, you know, their pensions and different things?
It's definitely something that we have discussed and would be interested in considering, but want to note that the reason I think my predecessor made the decision for us to be contracted is because it costs significantly less to employ our custodians through a third-party contractor. However, that was certainly before COVID-19, and so we may have an opportunity, or we may have to consider hiring them back direct. However, that is an additional cost to the budget that we would have to sustain, and we know that we've had conversations about increases to the budget and the ability to sustain that are connected to our student enrollment. So it's definitely something to consider, and something that we've discussed. Financially, it would come with a huge price tag to the district.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock.
I would, I'm just sorry, but I would like to just kind of see what, you know, the breakdown is, what it would be if we had the custodial contract as we have now versus, you know, with all the proposed, you know, dollars that are out there. I think that it could be added to the, you know, whatever's added to the budget. I don't know, you know, because I know that certain funding only goes to certain, you know, programs or certain jobs. So I just wanted to.
No, I think I understand what you mean. I'll ask Dan Phillips to do sort of a breakdown. So the cost of maintaining the number of custodians that we have right now through DM Burr, and then the same number of custodians hired direct as employees through the district. I'll ask him to, you know, put together the numbers on that, and then you can review that in an update and make a determination if it's something that we can even afford to pursue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Goodfriend.
I have a few things to ask.
Can you speak into the microphone, Trustee Goodfriend?
Sure.
Thank you.
There's a few reasons I think we have to look at. It does cost us every month to pay DM Burr. Okay, so we have to take that into consideration. What is the cost over a fiscal year, full year, for DM Burr versus the cost it would be to bring back in-house? That's number one. Number two, when we had in-house, and if there's a thought of in-house again, it's extremely important to have the supervision that is top-notch, on the ball, doesn't let it slide, because that's what was the reason that we went to the third party, is because it was deplorable. And people had been here for many years, and the supervision over it was non-existed. It just didn't exist. It was passed over. Everybody was somebody's buddy, okay? So those are terribly important. If you go back to in-house, and it was really nice in-house because it was our community, many of our community that were the employees, and that's really good. But when you get lazy and slack and nobody's there of supervising it to hold firm, as well as the school administrators, they were also a problem because they did not report the abuses nor see that their maintenance staff in their buildings either did it or they had to leave. So it's terribly important. I would like to have seen our community have it back again. I don't find anything wrong. I think it's really very good. It's a part of a family. But it's terribly important who is the supervisory, not at the administration building, because you, Dan, can't do it all. So you have to have supervisors, as they're supposedly supposed to have with DM Burr, to oversee that everything's going the proper way. It was awful. It was total filth and neglect. So you have to think about that. If we can get the right people to be the supervisory capacity and the administration in each building follow through. The teachers had papers to file complaints and problems that were within the building or in their classrooms, and they were ignored. So those are the problems in-house. You know, it's really great with Farmington, and I think it's nice. But if they think that unless they have the supervisory capacity, it's not going to work either. So we have to look at more than one aspect, more than just a community of people coming in and being in-house. I like that idea. I liked it then. And that was, it did, when we did change, it did clean up the mess. It really did. But it's not up for us to take care of this as a board. It's up to the supervisors in the building and the supervisors over the entire system within house. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Smith.
Yes. Steve, Dan, Dr. Hitchcock, I think our staff and team that we have are phenomenal. I think we do an excellent job if that was to occur. My one concern is that when we, and Dr. Hitchcock mentioned it, is that because the fact that we're in the state of COVID and there's a lot of funding in regards to this, to this COVID pandemic, that we are receiving funding, what was to happen if that funding was to dissipate and we're left with our regular budget? So that's something I just wonder if we're doing an analysis and providing any documentation to kind of provide the what-if scenario with that, you know what I mean? So say without COVID funding, how would we look? Well, I'm all for it. And I think we would do an outstanding job in the community, in our district, if we were to have our own staff maintenance in-house.
Thank you. Trustee Hoyt.
So to add on to what Trustee Goodfriend was saying, in terms of my recollection is similar to hers of what we were looking at 2 superintendents ago, I believe it was, when we made the decision to outsource our custodial and maintenance. And it was a lot of the same issues. It was staffing issues, it was accountability issues. The cost is significant. So we have to remember that every employee who is part of the pension system, we pay an additional, I think it's 22%, right? So that means, if right now we're paying, let's say, $14 an hour, it would be the equivalent of
significantly more than that in terms of the cost of the district. But more important than that, it was about having the flexibility and accountability to make sure we were getting our needs met within the system. And what I would want to make sure, if we're looking at that, at doing that, is are we simply, are we paying more for the same thing, or are we getting a different outcome? We know that in the current work environment, and in every industry, there are staffing shortages. It is hard to find staffing. It's not clear necessarily that that changing in that way would make the meaningful difference. So I think what we need to look at is how do we meet the needs of our buildings and our students and our staff to make sure they have clean, safe buildings that they're coming to, rather than just looking at how can we spend more on it.
That's right.
Trustee Smith.
Yeah, I just want us as a board to think positive. You know what I mean? This going back to back when, it's to me it doesn't give me a warm fuzzy at all. And I just think that with the leadership that we have here, and we have some really serious professionals who know their craft. I think we should think more positive instead of going back and becoming naysayers. Look more positive. Do our math. And do our homework. But think positive. That comes along with this too as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Klein.
It didn't sound to me like Dan was suggesting that we replace DM Burr. It sounded like we're just looking to supplement, particularly in the HVAC area, and maybe on one or two other people. I don't know if this has already been said, because there's a lot that's been said, but we're a school district, and our job and our expertise is to educate students, not necessarily building maintenance and so on. And I think that that's a reason that we have outsourced things that's maybe been touched upon in the periphery in terms of why it works. I know Trustee Goodfriend was mentioning there's no oversight. Well, that's because we're a school district. Our superintendent is here to hire educational professionals and oversee the education of the children. And building maintenance is part of any sort of corporation, be it public or private, but that doesn't mean that we need to stick our hands in it and make it our prime business when we can hire outsourcing that can deal not just with actually getting the work done, but also with the HR parts of that, with the payroll parts of that, and everything else that goes with it. It's an entire different business, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us to be outsourcing it when, again, that's not our stated. It is certainly a goal of ours to have our buildings upkept and clean for our students. But our job is to educate the students, and I think it's great to leave that to the professionals at DM Burr. And if they are not carrying their weight, if they're not doing what we pay them for, then we can fire them and we can find another place. That's the market.
And
Thank
that
you.
was what I was getting at. I mean, long-term, it would be nice to replace them and bring them in-house. But short-term, if we're gonna be understaffed, we don't wanna have to be closing buildings in the next few weeks when these people leave. Like I said, we could lose up to 6. And that would really be detrimental to our cleaning and custodial service.
Is it not DM Burr's responsibility to fill
is.
those vacancies?
Yeah, it's
And-
their responsibility to bring these custodians in, but they've not been very successful of late.
Is there a bullpen of competitors to DM Burr that we should start,
Yes. Yeah.
looking at?
Yeah.
Next meeting.
A couple things. There is a bullpen of competitors. One of the last companies that we had was one of their competitors. I'm familiar with kind of the 2 other main competitors. Prior to the pandemic, my experience with them in other districts was not stellar. I believe that certainly there is room for growth, but I think we're going to experience a staffing issue with any custodial and maintenance company that we contract at this time, because I believe staffing is an issue in every industry right now. We have worked with them to do everything possible to attract and maintain some additional staff members into the district, and they've struggled with that. I believe that there are other companies out there that may promise us that you know, this won't be a problem, but I'm not sure how true that would be once they finally arrive. I think this issue with these 6 employees potentially going to Farmington to return into the retirement system is unique in that they're leaving so quickly. And so having the notion that we would have this other company fill in kind of is a test drive to see how well they do and how well that they can support our buildings while these other, while D&BER is attempting to hire these other people. I would say if we get to a point where D&BER is unable to staff at the end of the year, this other company steps in and is able to staff and do everything that we ask, then we would come back to the board with updated information and you know, make a recommendation. I just don't know that we're in a position to put too much pressure on D&BER at this time, because if they choose to pull out, that would put us in a significant situation. So right now we have about 38 custodians. Losing 6 would put us at 32. If we put too much pressure on D&BER and they say, yeah, you're right, we're not able to accommodate this contract, then there's the potential for them to walk, and in the middle of the school year. So I think that bringing in the supplemental custodial team to get us through this hump and reassessing at the end of the year is the right fit for right now. And then we can make a more informed decision at the end of the school year when we have some time over the summer where we're not putting the health and safety of our students and staff potentially at risk.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. Trustee Corcoran.
I just had one more question. D&BER is our security and our custodian, and I know that in the past I had asked this question, is that if they were to lose those custodians, would they go to the security to replace those vacancies? Or will they like double work them? Or, you know, like, in other words, would they be security and custodian? Or would the security just stay security and custodian stay custodian?
Security, right now, the way it works is that custodians are custodians, maintenance are maintenance, and security is security. I do not, the only time where those cross-pollinated was during the shutdown that Governor Whitmer ordered as a result of COVID-19. We asked our security to fulfill some maintenance and custodial duties to justify continuing to pay them during the shutdown. But right now, our security, the security staff that we do have, they don't appear to be interested in working double shifts. I think there's also a limit in the number of hours that they can work. So in terms of being a day security and an evening custodial or maintenance person. But that's certainly something that we can ask D&BER and get back to you with some factual information. I just don't believe that our security staff right now is interested in working double shifts, because you know, that they all work for the same company and know that we're in need of additional staff.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. Any other questions? Hearing none. Okay, thank you. We've come to the public participation part of the meeting. Public participation is one-way communication in which members of the public are asked to address the full board with the understanding that board members will not be able to respond. Trustee Smith, would you please provide the public comment guidelines?
Yes. Because the Oak Park Board of Education values public meetings, not just meetings in public, we welcome public comment on school issues. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner the due process for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by public comments. The public comment portion of this meeting cannot be used to make personal attacks against a school board member or a school district employee that disrupts the order of the meeting and are totally unrelated to the manner in which the member or employee performs his or her duties. Speakers should be aware if statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy. Such comments may result in legal liability. Most comments can be concisely stated in 3 minutes, and the board respectfully asks that comments remain focused on the topic or issue and not be directed at specific personnel or board members.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Do we have any public comment cards?
None.
Okay, are there any members of the public who wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we will go to action items. We have several action items this evening. So we go to item 6A, approval of bid package number 2. And with that, if Kevin Donnelly and Krista Amalio are here. Welcome. Do you all have any comments you wish to make or anything you want to state before we see if there are any questions?
No, I don't believe so. I think we were able to present at the last meeting,
Right.
so we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? We did hear from them 2 weeks ago. Are there any questions from the board on this? Okay. Hearing none, Ms. Greer, would you please? Oh, I'm
Trustee
sorry.
Goodfriend.
Trustee Goodfriend.
If
It's
the
hard to see.
gentleman would take his mask off when he speaks, it would really be helpful, because I can't hear it up here. It's
He-
just impossible. The second thing is that I would like to know, you're representing.
Speaking
is
to the
this
microphone.
Is this the high school HVAC that we're talking about?
Trustee Goodfriend, yeah, that's what we're just trying to purchase the equipment for the D wing at the high school.
Yes. Would you tell me what section of the high school that's in?
D wing.
E-wing, okay.
D-wing.
Oh, D, okay,
D is in dog wing.
thank you.
Any additional questions?
No.
Hearing none, Ms. Greer, would you please call the roll?
We should read the
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry. My apologies. I'm moving a little quickly. All right. Trustee Hoyter, would you please read the motion?
Resolved that the Oak Park Board of Education approve the recommendation of the project team to enter into a purchase agreement with Thermalnetics for HVAC equipment, high school D-wing, in the amount of $495,000.
Support.
Motion has been made and seconded. No questions at this point. Ms. Trustee Goodfriend.
I'm sorry, but is that a part of the from the sinking fund?
Can you speak into the microphone?
Is that from, I'm sorry, is that from the sinking fund?
No, this is a bond item.
It's a part of the bond, all right, that's what I'm asking, thank you.
Ms. Greer, would you please call the roll?
Corcoran,
Sorry, yes.
Sinking fund.
Alvin,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes,
Hoda,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is approval of PA system at Lessen Early Childhood Center. Jim Nye, if you would come to address any questions. Are there any questions from the board on this item?
This is 6B.
This is for the PA system. The public announcement system.
Do you have a question, Trustee Corcoran? No questions? Trustee Klein, would you please read the motion?
Resolved that the Oak Park Board of Education approve the Technology Department recommendation for Lessen Early Childhood Center PA system, purchase and installation of a Roland TCU critical communication IP-based PA system consisting of IP-based combination classroom speaker, message board, clocks, and traditional wired hallway and large group area speakers in an amount not to exceed $70,950 from Rowland Soundcom. The pricing is based on the PEPPM cooperative bid ending December 21, 2022, available at peppm.org.
Support.
Is
Motion's-
that date correct? 2022? Yep.
Seventeen.
Oh, right.
Motion's
right.
been made and seconded. Clarification on the date? You want a clarification on the date?
No, it makes
Okay.
sense. That's why it's not to exceed, because the bidding is going to be open.
Got you. Thank you. Are any questions relative to this item? Hearing none, the motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Greer, would you please call the roll?
Smith,
Yes.
Lunkins. Yes. Klein,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
and Alvin.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thanks.
Now we'll go to item 6C, approval of Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Full Funding Act of 2021 Resolution. Dr. Hitchcock and Mr. Phillips.
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Phillips to start first to talk a little bit about the finances in terms of educating students with disabilities. And then I will kind of summarize it from a practical standpoint, what this means in terms of students, classrooms, instruction, programming.
All right, thank you. The IDEA funds, I have to go back to my notes. One moment, please. IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And what it does is it funds about 28% of the special ed through the federal government. It's through the U.S. Department of Education as we found out at the MSBO Financial Strategies Conference, the funding that we've experienced from the IDEA has been negligent. It's basically encroaching on our general fund, anywhere from between 25 and 35%. So it's a reimbursement model, and out of the reimbursements, we are getting, like I said, anywhere between 65 and 75% back. So we are, according to, again, the balance comes out of the general fund. I'm sorry, I'm looking at three different things here, so I'm a mistake. The idea is all children with special needs are entitled to free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. And basically funds roughly, 10 to 12% of special education costs. The funding goes through the state ISDs, from which it can be distributed to local school districts. Since Proposal A, Michigan has provided school districts and ISDs with foundation allowance based on the number of children enrolled. The foundation amount has increased over time, which is currently $8,700. The special education funding in Michigan is based on a reimbursement model. School districts and ISDs are reimbursed in amounts stemming from the Durant cases in the late 20th century. 28.61% of approved special education costs, 70.42 of approved transportation costs are covered. Foundation allowance is included as part of that 30%. So what's happening is we're mandated that we cover all special education costs. However, the funding has been really encroaching on our general fund. And what this IDEA model is doing is what they're looking to fill that gap, to make us 100% whole, is what they're looking to do. However, they're working through the ISDs right now to make that argument with the federal government. So what Oakland County is doing is soliciting the support of the school districts to help them go to Washington to fill that gap. So that's where I think Dr. Hitchcock wanted to jump in.
Sure. Thank you, Dan. I will jump in. So basically, in 1975 with the IDEA Act, there was a commitment to support 40% of the additional costs to schools. Right now, what is actually happening from the federal government is their support is less than 15%. And in addition to that, the cost to educate students with disabilities has increased by over 25% in the last 2 decades, according to the National Center for Disabilities. So first, the federal government is not upholding their agreement or commitment to pay 40% of the cost to educate students with disabilities. It really is less than 15%. And obviously since 1975, it's become far more costly to educate students with disabilities. So it puts us in even more of a financial bind to educate students with disabilities because the federal government is not upholding their commitment. And so what does that look like for us? It looks like a reduction in cuts for programs across the board, because by law we have to provide students with disabilities with certain supports. So in order to pay for or supplement for the supports needed to educate students with disabilities by law, it's necessary for us to cut general education programming in order to be in compliance with the law. It also prevents us from having the ability to increase teacher salaries, which we know is a hot topic here, because we are spending more money that we should not have to spend to educate students with disabilities because the federal government is not upholding their commitment. And then finally, we know that we have a commitment to excellence. Every child deserves a free and appropriate education. And in order to do that, we need to have the resources and materials to properly educate them. And so the argument is that in order to properly educate students with disabilities, we need the federal government to uphold the commitment that they have made, because when students with disabilities perform well academically, it raises the achievement of all of our students. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to accompany Mr. Hoyta, our VP of the board, to Washington, D.C. to make this case to Congress, to ask them to uphold their commitment to the 40%.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. Trustee Hoyta, would you like to read let's read the resolution and then we'll come to the questions. Trustee Hoyta, would you like to read the resolution?
Whereas the Oak Park School District recognizes the need for a strong investment in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and whereas the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was first enacted in 1975 to help ensure all students with disabilities will have access to a free, appropriate public education. And whereas with the enactment of IDEA, the United States Congress committed to fund up to 40% of the additional cost of special education, thereby promising to provide up to 40% of the national average per pupil expenditure, which is currently estimated at $13,828 by the U.S. Department of Education. And whereas since IDEA's enactment in 1975, more than 45 years ago, the current federal investment in IDEA is less than 14%. And whereas the Oak Park School District in Michigan and many other public school districts throughout the United States educate a growing number of children with disabilities that is now more than 7 million. And whereas our nation's school districts face an increased demand for greater resources to fulfill the needs of students under IDEA, including services for students affected by multiple disabilities whose individual education plans require more resources. And whereas with each increase in the IDEA child count, the Oak Park School District and others throughout the country continue to adjust their budgets to accommodate this increased need and ensure each child educated through IDEA receives the appropriate support, with some school districts dedicating 40% or more of their general education budgets to special education services. And whereas in 2017, the Lieutenant Governor of the State of Michigan's Special Committee on Special Education Funding found that in 2015-2016,
there was a shortfall of $11,498 in funding per special education pupil. And whereas the committee found this significant underfunding of special education cost districts $459 per general education pupil. And whereas the Citizens Research Council has found that districts with high levels of poverty have significantly higher rates of students served under IDEA, and whereas the higher amount of need leads to exacerbation of underlying inequities in funding that negatively impact student learning. Now therefore be it resolved that the Oak Park School Board remains committed to providing students with disabilities and their families the support they need and acknowledges the intergovernmental partnership among the local, state, and federal levels of government critical to this shared investment in our children. And be it resolved that the Oak Park School Board supports the IDEA Full Funding Act that will help strengthen federal investment in special education by authorizing a 10-year plan to fully fund the federal share of IDEA. And be it resolved that the Oak Park School Board urges Congress's strong bipartisan support for and passage of the IDEA Full Funding Act.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments? I see Trustee Goodfriend, and then I see Trustee Smith.
The question that I have is it for only one board member or any board members that wish to attend?
We're not on that item yet. That's the next item, Trustee Goodfriend.
Okay.
Okay. Trustee Smith?
Yeah. So our mission, our inclusive learning community provides the best academic and social experiences by educating the whole child.
Speak to the microphone, Trustee Smith.
Our inclusive learning community provides the best academic and social experiences by educating the whole child, one child at a time. That is our mission statement. So I feel that we are obligated to support educating these children with disabilities and supporting our teammates here in lobbying in DC for this IDEA legislation to pass.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Trustee Corcoran.
I wanted to just bring up, I know that we are losing teachers and staffing, but lobbying, or I should say, not the word lobbying, but the resolution here, it is speaking about funding, but if we have no teacher to teach them, is that something that we're also going to bring up there, or is this just specifically talking about just the funding for the special ed program?
The funding that we have to supplement because the federal government is not upholding their commitment means that we have to take money out of the general fund to compensate for the balance of what they have not provided. So when we take any money out of the general fund, we know that that impacts teacher salaries. And that was one of the things that I listed, that not getting the full funding that the government committed to does impact teacher salaries, which does impact our ability to retain and attract teachers.
Right, and with the reimbursement, how is that reimbursement? Is there a criteria to giving? I mean, do we apply? Like, how are we reimbursed for the general fund? I mean, yeah, how are we reimbursed back to it, as Mr. Dan has spoke about?
The government would give us they would give us a certain amount of dollars per number of students with disabilities documented in our school district.
Okay.
It's a direct reimbursement, so any special ed dollar that we spend is typically reimbursed on a percentage basis from the federal government. But what they're saying is that the federal government is only doing a portion of that reimbursement, not all of it.
Yeah, that's where that was gonna be my next question, is how much is being reimbursed, because is it a 100%?
Go ahead.
Oh, 100% or 50%?
Really just, they're right around 86%. They're only doing the 14% funding.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 14 because you said it was
14.9.
under.
Which is
15.
26% deficient on what we're supposed to be receiving.
Right.
Trustee Smith?
Yeah, and it's safe to say, this is every school in the United States that going,
Yeah.
that's, has to make this decision.
Right.
Correct, yeah, it's not just us. Any other questions? Trustee Hoyt?
I will just say, I know this is an issue that has been around as long as I've been on the board and well before that. And this is the first time that our legislative professionals in Washington are saying we have a real chance of making a difference here. And that's why there's this renewed push. So this has always been on the agenda of things schools have been advocating for. What's different now is there seems to be the willingness, or at least some level of willingness, to give it the attention it deserves to actually fund what Congress committed to 45 years ago.
Thank you.
I just have one last question, if I will. Will the Title I person go with you all as well as the special ed teacher?
That's the next item.
Oh, gotcha.
And Title I is different from special ed.
Trustee Klein?
I was just curious, the language in the resolution is that the federal government, with the idea of 1975, committed to fund up to 40%. And then the language that I'm hearing in favor of this is that there's a shortfall. And that language, up to 40%, is not the same as saying they committed to paying 40%. I'm not saying one way or the other because I don't know, but which is it? Is it that they committed to pay 40%, or they committed to pay up to 40%, and there's some sort of limitation that's not written here?
I have to get clarification for you on that unless
'Cause
Menachem
if-
has that information.
If they committed to pay 40% and they're not, I have to presume that everybody would be suing for that money.
Well, I think so remember, in 1975, Congress passed this law, which I think when we talk about public education in the United States, we have to recognize what we do in the United States is really unique in terms of making a commitment that every single child who is a resident of the United States is entitled by law to a free and appropriate public education, no matter what that costs. So that means if a child has educational needs that relate to hearing impairment, cognitive impairment, whatever it is, the federal government says we are requiring every school district to take on that responsibility and provide whatever is needed. When that was proposed, obviously there was a concern that that is an enormously expensive proposition. How are we going to do that when schools are already taxed in terms of finances? And so the commitment that was made was that that the federal government would take the responsibility of 40%. Now you're right in terms of language, and I'd have to clarify. It was up to 40%, but certainly the commitment upon which this was approved and supported by the people of the United States was based on the federal government taking responsibility for making sure that those costs didn't take away from the general education budgets of those other students. We're now in that place where it's such a significant burden that it is impacting significantly the students that are not classified as special education. And so what this resolution is looking to do is to call on Congress on that commitment to make sure that we provide the funding so that we can provide an excellent education for our students in general ed, that we can provide for the needs of our students in special ed, and not have those two be competing with each other for a small number of much needed funds.
I mean, I understand the concept of we'd like to have money so that we can pay for things. But what I'm trying to figure out here is how this language stacks up against what we've been presented here. I just pulled up the Wikipedia page for the idea, and it doesn't the word 40 doesn't appear anywhere, neither does percentage. So I'm not sure where that comes from. The idea of Full Funding Act is a very simple act that you can pull up very quickly from Congress, and it's just basically a schedule of this is what it's going to be in 23, this is what it's going to be in 24, up till 2028, where it's about $40 billion for the entirety of the program. That I understand, but I'm having trouble here putting it together, and we haven't been provided with any other background besides this, and so it's a little difficult for me to move forward on this resolution.
Trustee Corcoran.
My question is, who authored this resolution?
This resolution was authored by Trustee Hoyda, who received some sample language also from Oakland County Schools as well. I don't know how much he incorporated into that. If you want to, you can answer it if you want.
Yeah, we were provided with a draft resolution by the K-12 Alliance, and I took that and added some information specific to Oak Park School District and also some other relevant information as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions on this motion? Trustee Smith.
So just quick here, because the fact that it is a draft resolution and that number in regards to Trustee Klein's concern says to provide up to 40%. Do we at any time plan on providing a concrete number or, you know, a concrete number within that draft, or it is as designed, it is as stated here? Provide up to 40%.
The resolution notes up to 40. Now the question is whether there was ever that promise. I guess that's what Trustee Klein is asking. Trustee Hoyda.
So the resolution is clearly in favor of the IDEA Full Funding Act, which, as Trustee Klein mentioned, is very specific in what it entails. The justification for resolution refers back to the commitment, the promises that were made by Congress in the lead up to the passage of the IDEA in 1975.
There's a motion on the floor. Are there no other questions? Ms. Greer, please call the roll.
Albin,
I didn't hear her.
Called your
Albin,
name.
You call me?
Roll call.
Yes.
Copeland,
No.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Klein,
Abstain.
excuse me,
I'm going to abstain.
okay,
I don't have enough
Goodfriend,
information.
I abstain.
Hoda,
Yes.
Motion passes. Ayes have it. I believe that was 4 yeses. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you. Okay, 6D, approval of Menachem Hoyda's attendance, travel, lodging, and food expenses, K-12 Alliance Special Education Symposium in Washington, D.C. The K-12 Alliance of Michigan is planning on an in-person special education funding advocacy event in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. As we heard just a few moments ago, special education funding is critical to our school district. Vice President Hoyda's presence at this event is necessary, if not critical, to convey the Oak Park School District's position that special education funding needs to be adequate across all school districts. With this background in mind, the chair will entertain a motion to approve Menachem Hoyda's attendance, travel, lodging, and food expenses for the March 9, 2022 K-12 Alliance Special Education Symposium in Washington, D.C. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any unreadness or questions on the motion? Trustee Klein.
I didn't second it. Who seconded the motion?
Trustee Lunkins seconded the motion.
Moved by Smith, seconded by Lunkins. What else is, I presume that there's going to be some sort of an advocacy angle to this, and that there's going to be, I don't know how, but, you know, some sort of presentation to congressional staffers or even members of Congress. What else is going on this trip? Is there an educational aspect of it, or a meetings aspect of it? Is there some other value add to the district?
Well, the value added is to advocate for as much funding as possible, whether it's up to or committed to 40%, but as much funding as possible to Congress, and to hear that directly from local school districts. That is the sole purpose of the trip.
So this topic came up at the most recent Government Relations Committee meeting through Oakland Schools, which Trustee Hoyta is our representative there. I happened to be on that call for that discussion, and there were a lot of other districts as well who were on there, and all, many were in favor of this and trying to send somebody from their district as well. And then I think I read something yesterday, I may have forwarded on, where we can possibly receive a little bit of a reduction, but I have to make sure I'm not being crazy. I thought it was like $200 or something. But in any case, that's where the impetus came from for Trustee Hoyta. We also have Superintendent Hitchcock is also planning to be there as well. Okay, Trustee Corcoran.
Okay.
I see you,
just-
Trustee Goodfriend. I'll get to you next.
You just spoke in regards to that scholarship, $200, but that ended February 14th, where
Okay.
you had to get the information over.
Well, today is February 14th.
Yeah, so I don't know if he got over today.
Today's not over yet.
Yes, right.
No, I said I
Continue.
didn't know it wasn't put over. I didn't say it had. It was too
Okay,
late. We
go-
got to midnight, I guess.
Go
But
ahead.
The other question was, will the Title I person be going along and the special ed, because that is their expertise in regards to the special ed programs?
Well, we don't have a Title I person. I'm not sure who you're speaking of. And the K-12 Alliance Advocacy Group called for an officer of the board as well as the superintendent. So those are the individuals who have been invited to participate in this conversation with Congress.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend.
The question I have, and I received this yesterday from Mr. Katz, Mark Katz, says that I ask again, is this just one person that goes? Oh, just one person that is allowed to attend, or any board member, more than one in a single board?
And the answer?
Pardon me?
You said you asked the question.
The question is it just only allowable for one board member of the Oak Park Board of Education to go, or otherwise, is it more than one is able to go, is possible?
Okay, you're asking here at this table. I thought you said you were talking to him and asked that question of him. Okay, Trustee Hoyta.
I'm just looking at the announcement that came to us from OCSBA, so a couple of things that it says. It says limit one advocacy scholarship per district, and it also says that will be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis until 5:00 p.m. on Monday, March 14th, 2022, whichever comes first.
March 14th
March
or
14th.
February?
That's what I thought.
March 14th.
Thank you. Trustee Smith, did you have something?
No, it was just in regards to Trustee Corcoran's questioning in regards to the Title I representative. I think at one point it used to be Ms. Diablo. I think at one point, but I know Ms. Lalia and Ms. Sheila Gorski, they're just Title I teachers. So, yeah.
So it's, since Trustee Goodfriend put the question on the table, it would be my position, at least, that we don't need to send more than one board member to this. That gets into, in my opinion, waste. We have one board member. If we can get that, we can get one board member to go, whoever that person is, they can come back and report everything that needs to be reported. The superintendent is also going, so it would be my position that we don't need more than one board member to be there for something like this, whoever that might be.
It wasn't an opinion that I was asking. I was asking the question, can more than one person attend from a school district? More than one board member? That's what I'm asking.
Correct, but, and so.
Yes, more than one? Is that what you're saying?
More than one can, but I think they were, but I believe that what Trustee Hoyta was saying is they're asking for one.
Well, it's not what Mr. Katz has in this email that I have in front of me now.
What does he have?
He has that you can apply for, there's one person that can get the $200 from the ISD, Oakland County, okay? It does not say that it is limited to one board member per board can be in attendance.
Correct, which is what I just said. Is exactly
So
what I-
it's
this
up
was-
to the individual board members within a district if they wish to attend.
Well, yes, actually, anyone
Thank-
can attend if they want to on their own dime.
No,
It's up to the
No.
board to decide whether to reimburse.
I understand, as a board, not as the president, but as the board.
And I didn't make
Thank
any,
you.
I didn't make any determination as the
No, I
president.
understand you didn't, but
Okay.
that's the clarification.
All I did was state my position relative to your question.
I appreciate your position,
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this motion? Trustee Corcoran?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer to my question in regards to the special ed teacher. I guess I missed it.
Did you ask whether the special ed teacher is going?
Yes, I did.
No.
Why?
I answered that question. It was when the information was presented to us by K-12 Alliance in Oakland Schools, they asked for a representative of the board officer, or representative of the board and the superintendent. They did not ask for special education teachers or any other individuals to go outside of those two titles that I just mentioned.
Thank you. Trustee Hoyt.
Just to clarify some terms, because I want to make sure that we're being precise here. So the Oakland County School Board Association, which is not the ISD, is offering
Correct.
a scholarship for board member attendance at the symposium. The ISD, in partnership with Macomb, Wayne, and I think another ISD, formed the K-12 Alliance, which is hosting the symposium. Trustee Klein asked about what will be involved in the symposium. I believe they are still formulating the details of the schedule, but there will be members of Congress and congressional staff that will be attending, and the idea is to present a united delegation from Southeast Michigan to our Congress people to make this a priority. So it will involve some education and information. It will involve advocacy and emphasizing the importance and the primary importance this year for special education and funding of IDEA. And to get to Trustee Corcoran's question about our special education, our Director of Special Education, Dr. Hitchcock, is our Director of Special Education, is her expertise in implementing special education, or is it in funding and policy, government policy regarding special education?
Her role is the oversight in service of special education students in the Oak Park School District, ensuring that we're in compliance with the needs of the students within our school district.
And so our superintendent would really be the person who brings that professional knowledge of the finance piece, the policy piece, and the implementation piece in terms of being able to talk to our congressional leaders and provide that information. Is that right?
I would say that that's right. Whether it's appropriate or not, I think that the title of superintendent lends a level of gravity with Congress, that title carries a little bit of weight in Congress in a way that potentially a teacher would not, which is unfortunate because the teachers are the closest to the kids in the classroom. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that I believe that that it is the reason why the superintendent is being asked to speak on behalf of the school district.
Thank you. Trustee Corcoran.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I get a clarity. The two individuals that have been asked to go to Washington to lobby, it is in regards to funds, correct? For special ed funds and other things?
Yes.
Okay, so when I was asking in regards to the Title I person going, I guess what hit my mind was who is tracking the money? Would that be the CFFO or the Title person? Title I person?
I'm sorry, point of order.
Go ahead.
What's the relevance of Title I to special education?
Well, I thought that the Title I person was the one, or was that question for me? I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of time.
No, he was making a point of order basically to say that your question is out of order.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll redirect my question, is that okay?
If it's relevant to the motion.
Okay, so, the two individuals that will be going, I guess I had already asked the question in regards who would be going, or why wouldn't a special ed person be going, but I guess to piggyback on the funds based on the 40 or the less of the 40, the question I'm asking now is, what person is delegated to follow or that follows the special ed funding? Would that be the CFFO or one of the finance person? Who is that person?
The CFOO and
Oh,
the
the-
finance director oversee all funding in the school district, all
Okay.
finances.
Okay,
in
I'm
the
just
school
getting
district.
a better, I guess, understanding to what this really is now that I am, because I just wish it would have been brought to our attention a little bit earlier to talk about, but I understand now, thank you.
The reason why this wasn't brought to anyone's attention any sooner is because this literally just came up last week. And the only meeting we've had since then was a special meeting to make a determination on which search firm, or at least to hear from the search firms relative to the superintendent search. This was not part of that agenda.
I'm sorry, President, I guess I was out of order, but,
You wasn't out of order for that, I'm just letting you know why.
oh, you just let me know.
Okay. Anything else? Ms. Greer, would you please call the roll?
Smith,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Alvin,
Yes.
Cochran,
Yes,
and Hoda.
Yes.
Thank you. Most ayes have it, the motion passes. We are at item 6E now, resolution to provide flexibility regarding daily attendance requirement. Dr. Hitchcock, would you care to speak to this resolution before we read it?
Yes, just want to share that the crux of this resolution really centers around the impact of COVID-19 on our daily attendance rate. We pulled data to assess whether we would make that 75% threshold. So each day, the district, all of our students, we have to make a 75% attendance rate each day in order to prevent from any type of financial impact. There were several times first semester that we did not make this 75% rate. We assessed why that was happening and tried to see if it was related to virtual learning. So were there days that we did make the 75% threshold when we were virtual and people were just afraid to come in person? And there were days where we didn't make the 75% threshold when we were virtual. There were days when we didn't make the 75% threshold when we were in person. So there are consistent days, typically Mondays and Fridays, when we are not making a 75% threshold in students attending school. And when that happens, we suffer from a financial impact. And that's not a trend that's only happening here in Oak Park, it's happening statewide. So this resolution really is about asking the state to provide some flexibility with the 75% rating, so the school district is not losing funding when we don't make that 75%. We know that everyone has approached COVID-19 in different ways, and so there are some people that really are committed to staying home, there's some people committed to coming, and when we look at our whole district, we're somewhere in between. So we're essentially asking for forgiveness for the state in order to prevent this financial impact on the district. First semester, we saw about $130,000 in fines for not making the 75% attendance threshold each day. So that's a little background.
So I'll read the motion and then, I'll read the resolution and we will make a motion and open it up for questions or comments. Whereas the Oak Park School District and many others across the state have faced challenges in maintaining in-person instruction due to illness, staffing shortages, non-credible threats, and inclement weather.
I'm sorry, that's the wrong one.
Oh,
Yeah, 6E,
This is the right
6
one.
Echo.
that is E.
That is,
Yeah, he's reading the right one.
that's
Hold on,
E.
hold on.
It's right there.
You got
have to
something
go to the
different?
second part.
In-person instruction and illness. Isn't that the mask? No.
No, that's not
Oh,
it.
okay,
It's okay.
My apologies.
It's all right. Whereas when our attendance rates fell below 75%, we faced a tough decision of closing for the day or facing a financial penalty. And whereas many districts may be nearing or have already surpassed the 6 days that they are permitted to close, Oak Park School District is currently at 4. And whereas by lowering the 75% district-wide attendance threshold for the 2021-2022 school year that is required by MCL 388.1703, districts will have more flexibility to maintain in-person instruction. And whereas this change would remove the financial penalty associated with offering safe in-person instruction, even when presented with lower than average attendance, and whereas this flexibility would also help schools avoid extending their academic calendars into mid to late June, creating more challenges for families. And whereas if current trends continue and flexibility is not given, more than a third of Michigan school district will be forced to make up school days by extending the school year. And whereas, while the calendar year is only beginning, the school year is nearly halfway over. So eliminating this policy that disincentivizes in-person instruction is a matter of great urgency. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Oak Park School District Board of Education urges the legislature to act now to provide flexibility for districts and adjust the 75% attendance requirement found in MCL 388.17013. And be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be shared with the representatives and senators for the Oak Park School District. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
You gotta have the motion first.
We need a motion.
Should read the
Okay,
motion.
is there a second?
Second,
Okay, motion made by Lunkins and seconded by, was that? Okay, it's Goodfriend, thank you. Is there any question on this, trustee?
My apologies. I had the recommended motion on the screen here, and you were reading within the actual resolution, so
Right.
my apologies. And I was also aware of the mask man, the mask.
It's okay.
So my apologies.
Okay, trustee Corcoran?
Yes, my question is, who authored the resolution that you just read?
It came to us as a sample resolution, I believe through Oakland Schools, but I can follow up to look at it.
Any other questions, trustee Klein?
The last whereas clause states that the attendance requirement disincentivizes in-person instruction. Can somebody speak to how this policy disincentivizes in-person instruction? Is the idea that we'll have better attendance if we have more kids on virtual? And therefore, this would incentivize districts to push kids to virtual so that it's easier to keep them on attending classes?
You know what, I need to think about that a little bit more. I don't wanna answer off the cuff. I would need to think about that more. It depends really on what vantage point you stand in terms of COVID-19. And I would need to give it more thought to give you a thoughtful answer.
When the district has, well, let me jump back a question. I understand the district had a handful of days in the first semester that we did not meet the 75% attendance threshold. Is that right?
There was more than a handful. There was about $130,000 worth of
Penalties.
Fines because we did not meet the 75% threshold. If you want the exact number of days, I would have to get those to you at a later date.
As a generality, were those days weighted more towards the beginning of the year, or was it evenly spread throughout the entire semester?
It was evenly spread throughout the semester.
So it's not like we're trending downwards. We're trending even, roughly?
The trend, as I mentioned, is Fridays and Mondays,
I
whether we're in person or virtual. And that trend is consistent.
Has the district done anything to, I mean, it sounds like people are just taking long weekends. I mean, if you took this into an occupational setting, the very first guess would be you can't be taking vacation on company time and blaming it, or I mean, to put it in blunter terms, in a work environment, you might say your hangover on Monday is not an excuse to not come to work. Is the district doing anything to kind of reach out to students and say, hey, you can't be taking trips out of the weekend and skipping school?
Well, we can't prevent parents from taking their kids on trips. What we can do is talk to them about the impact that it has on their learning. Our staff members are calling people's homes consistently when kids do not come to school. There have been several attendance efforts through a program called Attendance Matters that I've shared with the board on more than one occasion. So we're working hard to get our kids in school, but as you know, people have all different perspectives on COVID-19. Some people, if their child has a cough, they think it might be COVID, they keep them home, they want them tested. Or some people may choose to be more liberal in their approach and send their kids to school. I mean, it's all across the board. There really is no rhyme or reason other than us seeing these trends that are connected to the weekends, which is a trend that we also see with teacher attendance. So that is a piece of data that is also consistent with the trend that we see in student attendance.
To address your initial question, Trustee Klein, it'd be my thought that requiring students to be in person during the pandemic specifically may disincentivize in-person instruction because they don't want to come, and so that's how I was thinking. So you're saying you still have a 75% requirement, and so that was what I was thinking.
That makes sense. So if we are forcing them to come to school, and they don't want to come to school, they just don't come at all.
Trustee Hoyda.
When I read that, the way I understood it, and it goes back to I know considerations at various points during last semester when there was a concern that some students might not come that day, whether it was because of weather or because of it was in close proximity to the shooting in Oxford, and part of that discussion was, well, if we open today and only 70% of students show up, we're going to be penalized. Whereas if we don't open today and 100% of the students don't have school, we won't get penalized. So that creates a disincentive at that point for schools to be open to educate those students who are able and willing to come on those days.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's capped off. We only have 6 days that we can shut down, otherwise we have to start going into the summertime.
Which this speaks to.
What's is the fine here on like a per pupil beneath the 75% threshold, or is there a per diem for the whole district?
Prorated based on the percentage that we are off from the 75%.
Okay. Any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, Ms. Greer, would you please call the roll?
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Alvin,
Yes.
Lunkins. Yes. Corcoran,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
All right, ayes have it, the motion passes. We're at 6F, item 6F, approval of recommitting to a mask requirement for all buildings in the Oak Park School District. On Friday, February 11th, the Oakland County Health Division, citing a decline in the amount of COVID cases and hospitalizations, announced an end to the requirement for student, staff, and visitors to wear masks at schools and daycares beginning February 28th, 2022. The decision whether to continue a mask requirement is now left up to the respective school districts. The safety of our students, staff, and visitors is paramount. With this in mind, we now have before us a resolution to continue a masking requirement in Oak Park schools. I will read the resolution, and then we'll have a motion and take questions. Whereas the Oak Park School District and many others across the state and country have faced challenges in maintaining in-person instruction due to illness and staffing shortages, and whereas when our attendance rates fell below 75%, we faced the tough decision of closing for the day or facing a financial penalty. And whereas many districts may be removing the mask mandate consistent with the Oakland County Health Division announcement, the Oak Park School District currently has a low vaccination rate. And whereas if current trends of community spread continue, we will experience an increase in illness and death without adhering to all mitigation efforts. And now therefore, be it resolved that the Oak Park School District Board of Education makes the determination to maintain the current COVID-19 mitigation efforts, including requiring masking for all students, staff, and visitors. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Smith
Support.
and supported by Lunkins. Thank you. Is there a question on the motion?
I have some questions.
Trustee Klein.
The Oakland schools is not acting in a vacuum. They've been phenomenally careful throughout the pandemic and phenomenally conservative in their actions. What they're doing here is the trend across the country, and it recognizes that there are consequences as well to enforcing mask mandates. They're not even suggesting that anybody, far be it from them, prohibit masks to those who wish to wear them. All they're saying is that they are recommending that they pull the mask mandate so that everybody can make an individual decision. Now, University of Michigan did a phenomenal job looking at schools that had mask mandates and schools that did not have mask mandates, and they found that the percentage of transmissibility in schools without mask mandates was quite a bit larger, proportionally. And what I mean by that is the rate of infection reached an average of about 45 cases per 100,000 students in school districts with mask mandates, and it was 62% higher, up to 73 cases per 100,000. So that 62 is a very big number that likes to get flashed around, and it can make a big effect. But the truth is, what we're looking at is an additional 30 cases, less than 30 cases per 100,000. That means that in a school district of 4,000 students, what we're looking at is 1/25 of 30, so barely one. And then if we look at, the American Academy of Pediatrics from last week, their data, 0.1% of each child who is infected is seriously infected such that they have to go to the hospital. And even among those that go to the hospital, the vast majority now are in the hospital not with pneumonia-like symptoms, but with croup-like symptoms, and they're out very quickly. So that's 0.1% of each child who gets COVID winds up in the hospital. Even among that's not very dangerous for them. And now we're talking about adding an additional 1 infection rate for our 4,000 student district. What that means is that, statistically speaking, there will be 0 more serious COVID infections among the students in our district. And on the other side, we're talking about enforcing a mask mandate on 4,000 students every single day who cannot see each other's faces while they're sitting in the classroom, who we all know are going out on the weekends and they're never wearing masks. On top of that, we haven't even started talking about what kind of masks are they wearing. When you look at the very pro-vax, pardon me, I'm very pro-vax. I'm not talking about vaccines, but those are out there. Very pro-mask networks now are admitting that cloth masks, pardon me for everybody here who's wearing one, are barely more than a facial decoration. Kudos to Trustee Hoyda, Trustee Goodfriend, who's wearing, well, who has here a KN95, and Trustee Hoyda, who's wearing a respirator. These are masks that are actually effective. The vast, vast majority of students are not wearing them. So we're talking about enforcing a mask mandate that is really, in most cases, and I'm not saying I didn't make this up, but has been now acknowledged by the CDC as well as being little more. There is something to wearing a cloth mask, but it ain't much. And everybody has to wear those so that 0.1% of a student might not get a difficult infection. And by the way, we also didn't talk about comorbidities and so on and so forth. This is a massive, massive sledgehammer on a tiny little ant.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to one more thing. In the summer of 2020, I asked very pointed questions at meetings that were all on Zoom about what is going to be the educational impact of only having a Zoom option. And the answers were very, very fidgety. We didn't get a single hard answer that entire summer. And Trustee Hoyda can attest, I had conversations with him afterwards where I said, this is going to be a problem, and nobody wants to talk about it. And now, at the beginning of this year, we find out that our students have, on average, dropped 2 grade levels.
That's right.
It's serious. The mask mandate is going to have an effect. Anybody who wants to wear a mask is absolutely welcome to do so. Anybody who wants to get vaccinated, it's out there. We are not in March of 2020 anymore. Masks are available for everybody who wants. Anybody who says they can't get one can come to me. I have hundreds. Anybody who says they can't get a vaccine, I will personally make you the appointment. It's not hard. These are matters of personal liberty, and I don't think that we should have a mask mandate anymore in accord with what the Oakland Schools is recommending.
Thank you, Trustee Klein. Trustee Smith.
Yeah. So as mentioned in some of the resolution and some of the verbiage here, and I'm in agreement with, we have a demographic that's not fully vaccinated. I'm not in the business of contributing to sustaining a petri dish, and some of these the people in the demographic that I'm communicating about, low insurance, some can't afford to go to the hospitals, if impacted, infected, both impacted and infected, so I don't want to be the one to contribute to the demise of our school district and anybody taking this home. I'm more in tune with maintaining a mask mandate at this point. It's too early for me. I'm not comfortable with pulling away from that, so that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Trustee Hoyda.
So again, I want to make sure that we're precise in the terms that we're using. The mask mandate was done by the Oakland County Health Division at Oakland Schools and was removed by the Oakland County Health Division. And in their statement removing that emergency order, what they stated is that their intention in doing that is that these decisions should be made by individual districts based on their needs. Several times in the statement, as well as currently on their website for coronavirus disease, they repeat that mask wearing is a critical part of controlling the spread of COVID-19. Wearing a cloth mask is not as good as wearing a surgical mask. Wearing a surgical mask is not as good as wearing a high filtration mask. But cloth masks are better than no masks, and that's what they clearly state on their website. I think when we consider the vaccination rate in our district, when we consider the rate of comorbidities, of high rates of asthma and obesity and diabetes, which are associated with a lot of the social and socioeconomic factors that exacerbate many other inequities. The recommendation from the superintendent to maintain the mask mandate in the district, is justified. And so I think we have to look at all the information in context as we're making that decision.
Thank you, Trustee Hoyt. Trustee Corcoran, I'll come back to you.
I just wanted to throw in my little piece in regard to the weekend or what you do outside of the school is even more reason why you may want to come to school with that mask on.
Thank you. Trustees. Trustee Smith.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. Trustee Lunkins has her hand up, sorry. Trustee Lunkins.
I just want to make a small comment.
Speaking to the microphone, Trustee Lunkins.
I'm sorry. As an individual who has gone through COVID-19, the complete COVID-19, I would not be without a mask. And I don't trust anyone that doesn't have a mask. Okay, whether it's a cloth mask, a surgical mask, whatever kind of mask it is, as long as you're wearing one.
Okay, Trustee Goodfriend.
I have researched and read. I totally agree with Trustee Klein. I was as much of wearing a mask as anybody. I've done everything that has been asked of me to do. I see our children that are 2 years behind. They're falling further and further. We're not making any progress with our children here in Oak Park. I'm talking about Oak Park. It's a miserable thing for a little child to start with going to school and they can't see the teacher's face. They can't see their friend's face. This is absurd. And when you go out in the open and into the community, you will see, and you can't deny it, they're not wearing masks. I do believe that we could possibly have a problem in the high school that they need some relief, and it's not taking a vacation as much as taking a vacation on the mask on Mondays or whatever day that we're having such a serious problem with attendance. I do believe, and I've watched this across the country now, we have to be sensible. We have to give a date when we can honestly say, those that want it, that's fine to wear it, but it's not to be mandated any longer, as long as the rates are going down and the science shows that we're really within the range. And so our kids have lost a lot. Virtual was not a help for their kids. It didn't help our kids. It didn't help other kids as well, but Oak Park, it didn't help our children. It didn't progress them and improve their reading scores and their math scores, etc. So now is the time to be respectful to families and to be respectful to give them the decision within their own homes who feels they must wear a mask, and those who give the permission for their children to unmask. I support that 100%.
Thank you, Trustee Goodfriend. I would just state that everyone has spoken that wants to, right? I know you want to, I got to come back to you, but I would just state that I've not seen any data, empirical or otherwise, that states that a child wearing a mask can't learn as effectively as if the child was not wearing a mask. I've not seen any data whatsoever that says that. Moreover, hearing some of the commentary, I understand the concern earlier was about the students, but there is also staff to consider. There are also our teachers to consider. There are support staff to consider. There are parents to consider. There is a litany of groups that we have to think about other than just the children, even though we are thinking about our children and thinking about our children. I know that there's, you know, I heard all due respect to Trustee Klein's comments about the percentages. If we can prevent even one child from getting COVID, if we can prevent even one staff member from getting COVID, then it's worth it, in my opinion. I've seen people die, didn't matter what age. Children, teenagers, people my age, people in their 70s, and it's just a fact that this has affected the black community more than most others due to the comorbidities that was spoken about earlier, due to some of these you know, things like diabetes and things of that nature that we talked about. And so I am fully in support of continuing this mask mandate. Dr. Hitchcock wants to say something, and I'll get to Trustee Smith.
I think it's just important that we are speaking about facts. So one of the facts is that we provide students with surgical masks every single day, and have provided staff with N95 masks to keep students safe. Any student that wants a surgical mask or any staff member that wants an N95 mask has many of them available at their fingertips. The second fact is that members of this board, as well as the administration, supported online instruction wholeheartedly in an effort to keep our students and staff safe during the height of COVID-19. The third fact is that we had 11 parents die in this district and 3 staff members die of COVID-19. The fourth fact is I have not heard a complaint or a request from one staff member, one parent, or a visitor not to wear a mask on our campus. Additionally, the CDC continues to recommend masks for schools. This notion that the next fact is our students, unfortunately, in Oak Park schools have been more than 2 years behind, well before the pandemic. So them lagging behind in their studies or in their level of proficiency is not connected to the pandemic. So all of those things are factual pieces of information that can be researched and cited. They're not just commentary, they are factual pieces of information about what is happening in our school district.
Trustee Smith.
Yeah, just quick things, just being a double stakeholder in this district, being on the board here, serving the community, and being a parent with a junior, a 17-year-old junior in the school district who wears his mask adamantly and is on the honor roll, and whereas virtual learning has not hindered his learning, and he's real adamant. He won't come to school without a mask, so that's one. Two, have we had any numbers? Have we had any numbers on, from Wayne County, in regards to them in the mask mandate? Not numbers, excuse me. What is their stance, Wayne County's stance?
You know what, I have not heard Wayne County's stance. I know that DPS just returned back to school at the end of January, but I do know that Wayne County's infection rate is 17%. Now, if you recall, at the height of the pandemic, we closed down for anything above 3%, which was fully supported 7-0 unanimously by the board to close. So a 17% infection rate with a less than 15% vaccination rate puts our students at risk, particularly if we're not adhering to every mitigation effort that we can to keep kids safe.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Hoyter.
There's a couple things I want to say. So the first thing is that again, going back to the statement that was made by the Oakland County Health Division, and as Trustee Smith alluded to, I believe the Wayne County Health Division is still requiring masks, although we are not in Wayne County, many of our students are coming from there. But in the Oakland County Health Division statement, I want to quote from it. It says, "The Health Division still strongly recommends wearing a mask while in public indoor settings, including educational institutions." The idea that this is about individual choice is really confusing to me, because those individual choices in a group setting, in a community, negatively impact everyone else in the community. So where we risk going is if we have a small number of people who stop wearing masks, and that creates an unsafe environment, or even a perceived unsafe environment for other students and staff, who then don't feel safe in school, who then don't feel, whether that means that they're coming and not feeling safe or not coming to school, that negatively impacts us as a district. And while we have a lot to learn about what worked and what didn't work during the pandemic as we were scrambling to make decisions with the resources that we had available to us, I just fundamentally have to take exception to the idea that nothing was done for our students or that they didn't get anything. That, to me, is insulting to the staff, to the administrators who worked hard at home to adjust, to be creative, to provide for those students, to the people who were here getting those computers out, getting information out. The idea that no learning took place, it's obviously, as the superintendent said, not supported by the data, but it's also really, to me, insulting. And I just take exception to that idea. Do we have a lot of work to do? Yes. Do we have a lot we need to learn? Yes. Do we have a lot that we can learn from the experience that, if we were ever to face something similar, might inform those decisions? Absolutely. But let's be honest about what happened and not look back and distort the record in ways that are harmful.
Thank you, Trustee Hoyt. Superintendent Hitchcock just noted that the positivity rate was 13% in Wayne County. It is also 13%. 17%. It is 13% in Oakland County. Over the last of the 7-day period, February 4th through February 10th. So we're not out of the woods just yet. Trustee Lunkins.
Even though it may be 17%, 2%, I don't care what it is, if you ever saw a person with COVID.
Talking to the microphone, please.
I am.
We can't hear you.
Hey, I'll talk louder if I have to.
Okay.
If you ever seen a person in a hospital with COVID, and I've seen them die left and right while I was in there for 2.5 months, you will wear a mask. Because now they're saying that children can actually bring this home and give it to you. I don't need it again for nobody. And I don't think anybody here or anywhere else want COVID. Because believe me, it is not a picnic. I'm through.
Thank you, Trustee Lunkins. Any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, Ms. Greer, please call the.
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Klein.
Ms. Baptiste, am I remembering incorrectly when we started at the beginning of the year, when you put up slides about where we were with our students before the pandemic and where we were at that time, that we went from 1 to 2 grades behind to 3 to 4 grades behind? And Mr. Hoyda, I'm not insulting any of our teachers who worked extraordinarily hard, but I just want to make sure that we have a correct record.
I'm going to need you to repeat the very first part of your question again.
Sure. I believe it was at the beginning of this school year. You were making a presentation with a PowerPoint discussing where our students were academically. And my recall from that is that prior to the pandemic, our average student was 1 to 2 grades behind, and that at the time of that presentation, our average student was in approximately 3 to 4 grades behind. Is that correct?
From that presentation, I did not present information on previous to the pandemic. I didn't present data previous to the pandemic.
There was no discussion of a
2019.
shift from 1 to 2 grades behind to 3 to 4 grades behind. I'm remembering that incorrectly.
I would have to review that presentation again, but I did not present on any data from 2018, 2019, previous to my arrival within Oak Park schools.
Okay, because my recall is specifically from that presentation that the pandemic caused a shift downward among our
Not
students.
that the pandemic caused it, that there was a contribution to it in addition to social emotional supports that were needed, not only academics. So it did have a contribution. I would be remiss to say that it did not. It impacted
From
all
time
of
A to time B, we went from 1 to 2 grades behind to 3 to 4 grades behind. Is that not correct?
I can't substantiate that. I would have to look at the data points again, and then I'd also have to compare that. That comparison would also have to be made to data from prior to the pandemic.
And it would have to be consistent with cohort data as we enrolled 800 new students to the school district. So we'd have to make sure that we were talking about the same students being tracked over time.
I just really quickly, Trustee Klein, because you're going back to that. I'm curious as to whether you're asking this because it's your assertion that mask wearing somehow affected learning.
That is my assertion,
Okay.
based on a slew of research that I've
That
done.
mask wearing affected the learning.
That's
Got it.
not that mask wearing affected learning during that period, but that my point is, at the time, we did that because we had to. We had to shut down the schools and go virtual. And as an unfortunate consequence, there were learning casualties. We lost in terms of learning. And the point is that right now, we are forcing all of our kids to mask. Any kid who wants to, from here till the end of time, is free to wear a mask in this school or in any other school. I'm not aware of anybody who's pushing to say that nobody should be allowed, or that anybody should not be allowed to wear a mask. The question is whether or not this mandate, one, is necessary, and two, is going to have consequences. Now, I've given you the numbers why I don't think that it's necessary, and what I'm saying to you, and one thing that I don't think that's been appreciated, is that there are consequences that are across the board in terms of social emotional learning. Now, I don't appreciate Trustee Hoyter grandstanding and trying to disqualify my opinion and say that I somehow, God forbid, don't respect the people who we've lost. We absolutely have, and it's terrible. But we cannot live our lives saying, is any single person going to be negatively affected? Otherwise, all the speed limits would be 5 miles an hour, and everybody would have to wear a motorcycle helmet in the car. We understand that there are numbers, that there are statistical roles, that there's a role for statistics in our society. And that's why I brought the numbers that showed that with no masking whatsoever, we are likely to see maybe one extra child getting COVID, and that one extra child is likely, is 1 in 10 to have a significant case, and that if he does have a significant, or she has a significant case, it's likely going to be more like the croup than it is like pneumonia. And for that 0.1% that child is going to have that, we are causing 4,000 students to mask up every single day, and we have to realize that that's absolutely going to affect them.
Thank you, Trustee Klein. Are there any other questions or comments? Here.
I just want to
Trustee
clarify, my objection was to a statement that was made that during the lockdown, our students got nothing.
No, not at all.
Right, I
apologize.
don't think, Trustee Klein, you were the one who made that statement. That was my objection was specifically on that statement.
And moreover, he didn't say anyone's name, so let's keep going. Trustee Klein, you want to say something else?
I appreciate that clarification that it wasn't, I don't know who said it, but it certainly not me. Our teachers worked very hard, and we have tremendous appreciation for them. The question now is, what do we do as of February 14 going forward?
Thank you, Trustee Klein. Ms. Greer, please call the roll.
Smith,
Yes.
Klein,
No.
Cochran,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Elvin,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
No.
Ayes have it, the motion passes. We're going to item 6G, approval of personnel actions. Is there a motion to approve the personnel actions report as presented?
Motion to approve.
Would you like to make the motion, Trustee Smith?
Yes, 6A, motion to approve the
6G.
the agenda, 6G.
6G, correct.
Second.
Okay, so motion's been made.
Excuse
Wait,
me,
if you have an issue or point of order?
Not at all, I was just
No,
gonna
no,
make the
no, no.
motion, make it.
Okay, all right. So trustee Smith has made the motion and trustee Lunkins seconded.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any unreadiness on the motion? Trustee Corcoran, we pulled this off of consent agenda for you, so do you have any questions on the motion?
I feel so grateful you did that for me. Thank you so much. Jeez Louise.
Ask your question.
Unreal. 1 second. My question is, where are we and how are we looking in regards to hiring, or I should say, covering the vacancies that we are encountering right now?
Trustee Corcoran, that question is out of order. It's not relative to the motion at hand.
Oh, are we on personnel action?
Correct, but there are names on that personal actions report. Are there any questions relative to those names?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Did something change from last time that I did this? Okay, so the names on here is that, maybe I'm missing something. So you want me to say the names?
No, I don't. What I'm saying is that if you have a question relative to us hiring someone or the fact that someone is no longer here, that's within scope. But to ask, what are we doing relative to hiring new people is not in scope on this motion.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you so much for clarifying that for me. So I will be talking about the terminations on this, right? You're saying I gotta talk about this one?
So use line items.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we have a total of 7 terminations. Was there any reason to why, in the exit interviews of why these 7, well, I don't know if all of them, yeah, the special education, I see that there's 1, 2, 3, there's 3 special education, excuse me?
Continue.
Oh, I see that there are 3 special ed exits. Is there any reason to why those 3, or 4, I'm sorry, excuse me, it's 4, have exited Oak Park High School?
We have answered this question ad nauseum in several previous meetings. We don't want to speak to any name of a staff member in particular, but we have shared ad nauseum the reasoning for individuals who have chosen to resign from the district and seek out other opportunities. The people that are listed on the personnel report today are not unlike the last 5 to 10 times we have shared this information with the board.
I do apologize for my ignorance, but I noticed that there are different names each time that I asked the question, so that's why I asked it again, because each time it didn't show 4 special ed teachers. It may, or excuse me, 5, because I see there's one at the top. I forgot. I did write that down, but I just didn't notice 5 special ed teachers the last time that I asked it. So that's why I asked the question differently. I asked the question based on the different personnel action that's brought before us.
I would say the special education teachers are in great demand. They too are listed on the critical shortage list, and there is a demand for special education teachers nationwide, particularly in this environment. There are other school districts who are afforded with far more ESSER fund dollars that have incentivized staff members to leave other school districts to work in those areas in order to, and be rewarded with an incentive that's well beyond what we can afford because we did not receive the same amount of ESSER dollars. I'll also turn it over to Carol to see if she wants to add anything to that.
I think the only thing that I would continue to say, Ms. Corcoran, is that this is and you've heard us say it a million times, a national crisis. And it is a crisis. We've been talking about this since 2016. And when other districts, neighboring districts, in fact, are offering $15,000, $5,000 per year to come to their district, we cannot compete with that. And so when you have incentives that are out of our reach, people are matching or giving years of experience and giving them incentives. We did have a signing bonus for special ed of $3,500, but when someone offers you $15,000, that is hard to compete with.
Thank you.
And
Any other questions on this? Trustee Corcoran.
Yeah, sorry. I just know that we just went over, that we were going to, I don't know if I'm out of order, but just to piggyback on the incentives, I know how important it is because it is a federal law. That is why our, board member and our superintendent is going to Washington. And I know that, with us having 5 special ed teachers that are exiting, I just, I'm really, I'm going to use the term that Mr. Smith, Trustee Smith says all the time. It leaves a fuzzy area with me because, this is a very delicate area, in regards to ensuring that our school is in compliance.
Ms. Degree.
To put things in perspective, that is, I think, really difficult for all of us to comprehend, is that this is in such dire need that our governor signed a bill to go through June 30th this year, to put any trusted adult in front of a classroom of kids because the shortage is so dire. So she authorized us as administrators, if we cannot fill classrooms with subs or teachers, that we can put a trusted, non-certified adult in front of kids. For her to come out and do that for the entire state is an indication that this is a crisis that isn't getting better, and things are not going to change until things change at the state and at the board level for understanding and supporting what we're doing and trying to do. And to address your other issue, we have put in 7 letter of agreements with our OPEA, OPESPA, and AOSPA to support our teachers and paraprofessionals, provide them additional pay for taking on extra duties.
Thank you. Are there any other, Trustee Hoyter?
I just want to make sure that we're clear for those, especially that are watching in the audience. So we have 1 special education teacher that is leaving the district on this report, and this doesn't in any way change what a level of crisis it is in our district at the state level nationwide. We have 1 special education teacher, a speech and language pathologist, 2 para-educators, and a social worker. On the same report, we have a new special education teacher who is being hired, presumably from another district where they may even tonight be sitting and passing a resolution for that person to approve that person's resignation, as well as a new speech and language pathologist. So to be clear, and I want to just mention, that's the resolution in front of us is to approve both those resignations, retirements, and new hires and transfers.
Thank you. Anything else from members of the board? Hearing none, Ms. Greer, please call the roll.
Copeland,
No.
Alvin,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
No.
Hoda,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Ayes have it, the motion passes. We will go now to information items, and our first information item is Child Care Stabilization Grant Payments, and Dan Phillips, CFOO, will speak to that. Thank you.
This one is, excuse me, this grant is a nice grant, but it's got a small window to it. It's the Child Care Stabilization Grant. The grant was formed to help the child care workers who financially, as the COVID-19 shutdowns detrimentally affected these workers. The MDE acknowledges hardship, thus they provided grants to assist these workers. Approval by the board to provide bonuses for early childhood leads and aids is what we're looking for here. It's a grant from the state that needs to be expended by February 28th. So that's where, and we just found out about this just a couple weeks ago. So we're trying to help these employees out. Third-party staff are to be paid by the 18th for them to hit their payroll, but that's not needed for approval by the board. So we can actually go forward with those as third-party people. These bonuses are anywhere from between $500 and $1,000. And we're just asking for next week we'll be asking for the approval from the board to award that to these employees. The grant with these bonuses would equate to about $24,000.
Thank you. Are any questions for Mr. Phillips? Hearing none, we'll go to item 7B, Technology for Early Childhood Programming. Brandy North, Early Childhood Center Director, will be speaking to this item.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Brandy North, and first of all, kudos to everybody because it's my bedtime, so thank you all for being here and hearing me out. Jim is here with me. Everybody knows Jim. Everyone knows Jim. Can they see that one? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we'll be talking about technology purchases for Lessen, our Early Childhood Center. I'm very excited to present this to you as we want Lessen to be the cornerstone of Oak Park and really set a solid foundation. So we want to make sure it has top-notch technology and opportunities for our students to really engage with technology. With that being said, we are purchasing iPads. iPads will be for not only all of our early childhood licensed programs, which include Latchkey, as well as preschool, which is GSRP. As you can see above, the iPads will be paid via the grant funds that we received, the Child Stabilization Grant. Thank you very much. As well as bond funds to supplement costs that Jim was able to cover through our bond that might not have been covered by the grant because there were stipulations regarding what we could spend the funds on. So the chunk of it is covered by grant funds, however. So those are the iPads that we will be purchasing. We also have staff devices. So a lot of our GSRP program requires data, and Oakland Schools requires us to input this particular data through core and et cetera. So we are getting laptops for our associate teachers because they are also required to input data along with the lead teachers. So we will be purchasing laptops for our staff at Lessen. I'm just leaving so you can see the numbers if you'd like to see them for a second. And then lastly, all other technological devices that will be purchased for Lessen, as well as our early childhood program, I should say. I shouldn't even say Lessen because it will be our early childhood program. We will be purchasing it now in order for us to leverage these technological devices to enhance our programs and to continue our programs that we currently have. So like right now, our GSRP program does not have devices, so they borrow or go without. So these are the other devices that we will be using to, once again, enhance our instruction and to make it more interactive so that the children can have these opportunities as far as STEM and et cetera, which we will be working towards next year, including these different things into our curriculum. And I'm leaving it because I can talk all night. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Yes.
Are there any questions for Ms. North? Trustee Smith, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just quick question, not being funny, because I'm an Android user, tablet. I'm just curious, why iPads?
They're better. I forgive you for being an Android user, but I'm going to let my tech person, Jim, come up here and talk.
I'm just curious who made that determination between it. That's all. I'll leave this alone after this.
So currently, our kindergartens have iPads,
and they're currently existing. We're using a mobile device manager to manage them, push all the apps to them. So the idea is we would then blend that in with the current curriculum, the current programs we're using, and the current devices we're using. As far as ease of instruction in schools, the iPads have done pretty well with the ability to push apps to them and the simplicity. Okay. You don't always see that on the Android devices, at least in education.
And I will add to that the children are very familiar with that, so it also lends itself when it comes to using it for instruction.
Yeah, this is where it starts, okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? I have a quick one. I assume we pay for Apple Care or some sort of,
Yes.
you know, with these being in the hands of little ones.
Yes, 3 years of Apple Care. We have cases and carts, all the protective measures that we need. And we've had them for kinder, and we haven't had any real issues either.
Praise God. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. We'll go to item 7C, Lessen Early Childhood Center Gym Floor Asbestos Abatement Bid Recommendation, Steve Burnett.
Mr. President, can I just thank Ms. North for sitting in the audience for the past 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Thank you.
And whipping up her presentation as she was sitting there, I think understanding the gravity of the meeting tonight. But I told her she could just make comments, but she wanted to go above and beyond and do the presentation. And she certainly had enough time to do that. So thank you for being here this evening. We're sorry that your item was so late in the agenda.
Will you be providing us a copy of that presentation?
Can we get in the next week?
Yes, we'll make sure we get a copy from Ms. North.
Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Are we doing 7C, the early childhood gym floor replacement, or the asbestos abatement item?
What?
C, what's it, is it replacement or abatement? I have C.
We're doing the C.
Oh, excuse me, gym floor replacement, sorry.
The next one.
So, yep, 7C, Lessons Early Childhood Center for gym floor replacement bid recommendation, and the floor is yours, Mr. Burnett. Thank you.
Which one were we doing here?
I'm sorry, 7C, Lessinger Early Childhood Center gym floor replacement. That's what we have, bid recommendation.
Yes. So we, as you saw, I included the bid tab for the two companies that bid on the gym floor replacement. We interviewed both companies and we selected Braun for a total of $72,370, because we did accept the one alternate for the wet adhesive. And then we also want to do a 10% contingency, which would be a total of $79,607. And this will be, and this is to replace the gym floor that's currently there that's failed.
Any questions for Mr. Burnett? Yes, Trustee Goodfriend.
Does that come out of sinking funds?
Yes.
Yes, this would
Thank
be
you.
a sinking fund, yes.
And since we haven't seen an expense budget on sinking funds, I think that would be terribly important for us to see prior to us making some decisions to increase it. Thank you.
Question for you, was this already in the budget?
No, this
No,
is,
this is over beyond.
this is
Thank you.
outside of the
All right.
budget, yes.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Burnett? Okay, hearing none. Item 7D, Lessinger Early Childhood Center Site Improvements Bid Recommendation.
Again, I included the two bids we got. We're very familiar with Rolar and Braun. Braun's was a lot higher, but Rolar they did our original patching and stuff back in 2020.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we're having a problem hearing you.
Oh, sorry. The company we selected was Rolar Construction. We have some previous experience with Rolar, and they did a very nice job for us back in 2020. And their bid was the lowest bid there, so we accepted their bid, or we interviewed them, and we are encouraging you to accept the bid of $85,525, and then a contingency of $8,552, for a total of $94,077. And this is the draining issues that are having the significant impact on the kitchen area, the gym area, and then some site improvement as far as concrete. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Burnett? Trustee Goodfriend?
That is also from sinking funds, Mr. Burnett?
That is correct, Trustee Goodfriend. That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Burnett? Here now we go to item 7E, Lessinger Gym Floor Asbestos Abatement.
Yes, this was done by a quote because it comes under the bid threshold. So Nova Environmental got 4 quotes, and the lowest being BDS, which stands for Building Decommission Services, of $18,460. And then we would have a contingency of 10% on that as well. That's to remove the flooring and all the asbestos that's in the flooring prior to the gym floor being, we have to take the asbestos flooring out, then we have to raise the level of the floor before the flooring can be put on.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Any questions for Mr. Burnett? Trustee Goodfriend?
Yes, and the building, the asbestos abatement, that's with the Building Decommission Services? Is that who you recommend?
Yes, they call themselves BDS, but that's their
Correct.
formal name.
Correct. Okay, and where does that money come from?
That would also be sinking fund money.
It doesn't say that
Yeah,
here.
it doesn't say it.
I'm sorry, but that's where it would come from, sinking fund.
Yeah, you're right. It
So
doesn't
there's
say.
3 items that you just presented, and they're all 3 sinking funds. Is that correct?
That is correct, Trustee
Uh-huh.
Goodfriend.
Okay, well, we need to get some information.
Any other questions for Mr. Burnett? Hearing none,
Thank you very much, Mr. Burnett.
You're welcome.
we'll go to item 7F, Community Meeting on School Safety. Dr. Hitchcock?
Just following up as another reminder that on Monday, February 28th, prior to our school board meeting, we will have Jason Russell, the founder and president of Security Education Consultants, here available in the auditorium for a debrief session on an overview regarding school security. He won't be able to go into full detail as we do not want to share our vulnerabilities with the entire community, but we'll be able to give a very surface level presentation to the community and answer questions on school safety. Then we will go into a closed session with Mr. Russell to hear about the assessment in greater detail.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. Any questions for Dr. Hitchcock? Trustee Hoyt?
Will that closed session be at 7 o'clock, or will it be prior to that?
7 o'clock.
Any other questions for Dr. Hitchcock? Hearing none. Okay, we have concluded our information items. We'll go to Trustee Hoyt.
There is one more information item, 7G, but I'd like to make a motion regarding that.
I can't hear you.
7G, okay, I thought it was. Okay, all right, go ahead, Trustee Hoyt.
So item 7G on the information item is regarding board committees and appointments, and I'd like to make a motion that we table board committees until the July 1st organizational meeting, since we will be very busy for the next few months on the superintendent search. And so the motion is to table board committees for this year until the July 1st organizational meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made to table board committees until the July 1st organizational meeting. And the motion is made by trustee Hoyda, and seconded by trustee Smith. Any questions or unreadiness on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Greer, please call the
Oh,
roll.
I'm sorry, I had a question.
Okay,
So are those committees that are already in place going to remain?
they're being tabled until that time. They still remain now.
Oh, gotcha. That's,
Yep.
so then, yes.
Yep,
Thank you.
okay. Ms. Greer, please call the roll.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Elvin,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes,
Hoda,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our informational items. Are there any communications, as we go to board and administration communications, any board or administration communications, anything from the administration?
Yes. I just want to make clear with everyone here, as well as with our community that is watching, that a vote no on a personnel action report is precedent-setting and is really atypical. It sends a very strong message to new staff members in our school district with regards to their less than warm welcome to our school district. It's not something that occurs frequently, and in addition to it sending a less than warm welcome, it contributes to the burden that is being placed on our existing staff to fulfill duties and responsibilities of this new staff members that we're hiring. Now, of course, this personnel action report did pass, but in an effort to attract and retain new teachers and educators throughout our school district, having a no vote on a personnel action report sends a chilling message to the community and any potential candidates that are considering applying to our school district. And so I felt compelled to make that point because I don't think that that is the intent, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands here that it is atypical for that to happen.
Thank you, Dr. Hitchcock. Any communications from the board, trustee Goodfriend?
yes, I would suggest, and I happen to agree with Dr. Hitchcock, that these personnel actions should be separated from new hires to other parts of the personnel agenda. Thank you.
Any other communications from members of the board? Trustee Klein, I see.
Mr. Phillips spoke earlier about some grant money that we have to give bonuses for the early childhood folks. And if the board is amenable to, I'd like to move that we just approve that distribution instead of waiting it out, given that it's got a hard deadline of the end of the month.
We greatly appreciate that.
And it's grant money.
If it is approved, we would greatly
So I'm going to make
appreciate
that motion, that whatever the grant money is, it should be dispersed to our early childhood fellows.
I support.
Can you restate the motion?
Sure.
I got move to approve distribution of grant money.
For the early childhood educators.
It's a child care stabilization grant?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
So move to approve the distribution of child care stabilization grant payments?
Yes, funds.
Okay.
What's it, funds?
There we go, okay. Motion has been made, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, Trustee Goodfriend, you already seconded?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Goodfriend seconds the motion. Any unreadness or any questions on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Greer, please call the roll.
Smith,
Yes.
Lunkins,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Hoda,
Yes.
Goodfriend,
Yes.
Elvin,
Elvin, she called your name.
Yes, I thought she said Corcoran, yes.
and Copeland.
Yes.
Down here, Elvin sounds a lot like Corcoran, sorry about that. Any other communications from members of the board? Trustee Hoyda.
I just want to bring the board's attention to the emails that we've received about the election for the MASB board. The MASB board is broken up into two types of board members. So they have representatives by region. We are members of Region 8, and that seat is being, there's an election for that seat. There's also another classification which breaks up districts by size. That's not up for re-election this time, or I believe it is, but only one candidate ran. So the Oakland County School Board Association hosted a forum where candidates for the Region 8 seat had an opportunity to answer questions. Everybody was sent a link to that, so we can take a look at that. We've also been receiving information from each of those candidates to explain why they feel they should represent us on the MASB board. And we also were sent a candidate guide from MASB with each candidate's information. So when that does come in from the board, we can be prepared to make a selection.
Thank you, Trustee Hoyta, and we will have that come before us at our next meeting, so we can make that selection. Or any other communications from members of the board? I have a couple. I stated this last week, but I want to congratulate again Javier Briggs, sophomore, Makai Daniels, junior, Quentin Clark, junior, for their Oakland Youth Innovation Lab presentation given on February 2nd. All three of them are members of the Distinguished Knights, and they did a tremendous job. And as I said last week, I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome is of their plan. So I'll definitely be looking to see what happens, and I'll definitely be coming to check it out. And I hope the rest of our board does the same. I want to also, again, I said this last week, but want to recognize Glennie Cross, who will be going to college at Princeton University, where he will play football as well. Tremendous job by that young man, so I wanted to give him his kudos as well. I also want to note, and I said this also last week, and we heard a little bit of this kind of resurface tonight. We as a board have to govern ourselves in a way that makes candidates want to come here, that makes really good, positive, quality candidates want to come here. It's not enough to pay them. People don't go to school, I said this last week, they don't go to school to get bachelor's, master's, PhDs, ed specialist degrees, or whatever degree that they have. They don't go to school for that to be second-guessed and mistreated. They want to come to a place where it's positive and it's a positive environment. And if it's not positive, they can and will go elsewhere. We're looking to get a new superintendent now. We have to govern ourselves in a way that helps to attract talent, quality talent, to fill this position.
Agreed.
Are there any other communications to come from the board? Trustee Hoyta.
I forgot to mention, I want to congratulate our girls track team, which had a #1 time in the sprint medley relay in the LAB Midwest Invitational. So congratulate to them. Congratulations to the individual runners. I believe a number of them also had significant accomplishments in that meet as well. So I want to mention congratulations.
Thank you. Anything else from members of the board? Any addenda from members of the board, from the administration? Thank you. The time is now 9:54, and if we can do that by unanimous consent, we will adjourn at this time, following Trustee Smith letting us know when the next meeting is.
Yes, the next meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Monday, February 28th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the Oak Park High School Auditorium. Prior to the meeting at 6:15 p.m., we will have a community meeting on school safety facilitated by Jason Russell, founder and president of Security Education Consultants, SEC.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.